Welcome to the Tutoring with Sheryl podcast, where I support students on their literacy journeys, whether they are trying to become a better reader, writer, or speller. I actually work on all of them. And I was just going to break down kind of the types of kids that I see and work with and who I've maybe worked with just today, because this is a pretty typical Monday. I've got some of my kids are rolling into their new school years. And I was just talking with a little buddy that we had to reschedule his date for this week from Monday to Wednesday, from Monday and Wednesday to Monday and Tuesday, because he starts school on Wednesday. And he he was like, "Oh wait, I start school on Wednesday." I said, "Sounds like it." So we need to get going. So this morning, when I was working with a couple of kiddos, the young boy, he needs help with his math and literacy skills, but his little sister joins, and she's having a birthday. So we were talking about her birthday coming up, and she was super excited. But then we dove into what her brother needed, and he's still really kind of working on some early math skills, which is not something that I typically support. But because the mom needs support in both areas, I went ahead and did it. I will support math skills to a point, but my specialty right now is literacy. So I want to dive further into that with him. So he's just still working on like initial consonant and short vowel sounds, but he did quite well today. I think the big issue is with a lot of the students that I work with is they're distracted. So just kind of keeping them focused on what we're doing can be a challenge, but he did well in the end. Then I had a little bit of a break, and I worked on, of course, the birthday sign that I was going to post, and got that posted. And then I went on to meet with my next student and I want you to know that all these kids meet with me virtually. So this young boy that I met with is in the state of Illinois, and he was working on the letter L sound. And the unique thing about this learner is he gets confused with the capital I and a lowercase l. So I had some books that I had just picked up from the library. This is one of the reasons I like to have current books from the library. I just go once a week. I talk about different types of books, and I have some books on hand when I can. When the weather doesn't permit, clearly I don't do that. But today I had Chicken on Vacation, Pete the Cat, Rocking Field Day, Vivi or Vivi, I'm going to say Vivi, loves science, and Nat the Cat sets a trap. And we were just looking at these titles, looking at like, what's the difference between this? This is a lowercase I, this is an uppercase L. And then we were looking at the uppercase I and the uppercase I, and he's like, but that looks like an L. And I said, well, it does, but this is a capital I. And then our lowercase L is flat, or vertical. And so yeah, it does look like there's an L there, but this wouldn't be chilikin, chilkin, it's chicken. And so we're kind of talking about that. And some of my kids, it's really more of a visual issue than even an auditory one, because he knows his sounds, he just gets mixed up with the letters. And so I was really trying to talk to him about fonts and what a font is and what a font looks like. And so it can be really tricky for kids. Then I met with another student who is very close on the lessons, but they are doing the second part of the letter L and then W. And this student also has some auditory processing issues. And so he doesn't necessarily not recognize it, the symbol on the page, but he can't hear the sound. And my third student actually lives in the western part of Canada, so he's an hour earlier than I am. And just getting him to recognize those letter sounds is really what we've been working on. And he's very proud of the fact that he's, built a YouTube page, and he likes to share that with me. But now my emphasis is like, well, why don't you write out a script? Because so I just kind of get on and just talk about a game that I've played. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe writing the script, or working on, the handwriting portion, and coming up with a complete sentence that you can like read or whatever. So we are definitely working on that. Now, the three kids that I saw, two of them are public school, one of them is private. Now, this afternoon, I'm meeting with a public school, private school, and then another public school child. So in the course of today, I have 6 lessons. I would have had 7, but I've got a student that's going on my wait list for right now, because he's going to be playing football and doing some other things, so his schedule didn't jive. But the student this afternoon, the first student that I'm going to be meeting with, she is going back, and she's kind of heightening her awareness of the phonics skills for reading and for writing. And what we have really noticed now that we've gone back and we've been really focusing on those, her ability to decode unknown words is definitely increasing, and her spelling is dramatically improving. And then my second student this afternoon will be working on the IE and the IGH sound patterns and spelling patterns. Both of those students are reading novels. And so the first student this afternoon is reading a longer novel, and my second student's reading a shorter novel. But if I keep them in the decodable information, they don't ever really grow. So these kids are ready for novels. So my afternoon kids are doing that. And then my final student that I meet with meets with me for a little bit longer. She's going into 8th grade. We are really working on spelling patterns. She's doing very specific spelling patterns. She's diving into Greek and Latin roots, and she is going to be finishing up a persuasive essay. So those are the types of kids I'm meeting with today. Now, throughout the rest of the week, I'm meeting with all kinds of students that are different grade levels, abilities, and have different things that they need. But I think the clear component here is that we're working on phonics skills, decoding skills, morphology, studying prefixes, suffixes, which I would just categorize as affixes. So we're really looking at the structure of words. How do we sound them out? How do we use them with our spelling, and how do we use them with our writing? Because in my personal opinion, I've felt this for years, that it's this pattern that they're all connected with. And if you looked into anything with the science of reading, there's a strong correlation between what I feel and what is true to be, that kids need really strong phonics skills. They need strong background knowledge. They need vocabulary. They need to be writing, spelling as much as possible. Now, that makes it a little bit difficult when I meet with a child in a 30-minute lesson, but there's some component there that I'm working on. I might not be able to get to all of them in that 30-minute lesson, but I definitely do dive deep into that. The other thing that I really like to do is bring books that the child can actually read. And I actually just pulled these off the shelf and everything went boop. So you can see that I have some novels over there, but some really great books. Just go to the library and pick up some I Can Read books and look at the level 1. Now, in my opinion, some level 1 books are actually more of a level 2 book, but you can do some reading with your child where you're doing an I read, you read. Read the book multiple times. Even if you think they've memorized it, have them follow along with the words. See if they can follow along with the words. And then I gave a suggestion to a parent because they were worried that their child had actually just memorized it. And this was for a student who's an older student, but really is not even reading books quite this long. They're really reading more of like Bob books that are just very, very phonetic and very short passages, very similar to the U-Fly materials that I use on those very beginning lessons. And I said, you know what you can do? You can just take whatever this sentence is and write it down on a sheet of paper and see if your child can read that sentence. And if they can read this sentence without any picture clues, then they've probably got that sentence down. Or you can just take the words and put them on flashcards and hold them up. And if they can read it, then they probably can do that. But there's a lot of variety of books that you can go into the library and pick up. Now, I want you to know this is a level 1 book, and look at the difference in this level 1 book compared to this level. Well, this one's not, this one's about the same. They have quite a bit. And if I was working with a very beginning reader, this book would still be too difficult for them. And that's why I also have access to some online books. I don't know, this is more of a ready to read. So this might be more along the lines of what the 2 students that I saw this morning would probably be able to read this independently. They would struggle with a book that looked like Pete the cat. And one of the things that you can do is just pick up the book and see if your child can actually read it. And if they can't read it, then you have to decide, do I want my child to independently read the book or be able to read the book with me? And so that's where you have to kind of decide, what does your week look like? Do you want to practice this one a bunch of times, or you just want to say, hey, I'm going to have you sit down and you're going to practice reading this to your stuffed animal so that you can really feel confident. But we have to have some place to start. Now, that's not to say that they can't pick up this book. Let's take a look at this book. That's a level 3 book. I'm dropping things off, and it's a much more in depth. So this might be a book that you read together and you talk about the elements in the story. All right, well, I have more tutoring to do. I have many more students to meet with this week. So I just want to thank you for joining me today to get a quick peek into what's going on behind the scenes at Tutoring with Sheryl. And I also want to let you know that I am going to be on Michael Gibbons' podcast. For this next season, we're going to do the recording and it will show up later. And I'm going to be talking about how I use my YouTube page to connect with potential parents that want to hire me. And I've literally had parents say, I found your social media, I binge watched it, I think you are the right person for my child, you seem very knowledgeable. And they are so happy when they get going with me because they see such a change in their child's reading ability. And I also want to encourage you to look at the links in the description. I've got courses for parents wanting to support their children with through the reading process, homeschooling families that are struggling with their planning. And then you can sign your child up for lessons with me. I would love to hear from you. Chime in with where you're watching from, what's your child's reading ability, what do you need help with, what's a topic that you'd like me to address. I would be happy to do that for you. All right, I'll see you guys later. Keep the learning going.